People have seminal moments that shape their lives. Marriage, having a child, a new job, graduation, first homes. My moment are the events of October the 5th, 1989. Prior to October the 5th, 1989, I was a happy-go-lucky 27-year-old, drank beer and traveled the world. That all disappeared in one day. I was at work and I worked at the airport, and I got a call. It was a contact number for my brother Dwayne. And Dwayne was a civil engineer for the Corps of Engineers out at Shimia. And he missed his flight, and it was very unusual. He's a pretty, on it kind of guy. And so I called to his house. This is before cell phones and texting. He didn't pick up, so I drove over to his house. And he didn't have a garage, and he bought this fancy new sports car. And the sports car was not in the driveway, so I'm assuming, obviously, he's in the car somewhere. So I rang the doorbell. Nobody was at home. And I went around to the back and climbed up on the deck. And there was a sliding glass door that led into the house. And it was unlocked. That's the first time that the hair on the back of my neck kind of stood up and said, this is, something's wrong here. If you had your house broken, why would you leave the door unlocked? So I entered the house and I walked through, and I let Larry and my dad in the front door. And Larry and I went into the spare bedroom and to try to find the roommate's name. And we found a checkbook, had the name on there, and we were trying to figure out how to get a number for the place of employment. So we were on the phone, and Dad was just looking around the house for other information maybe. And they came, he came out of the bedroom, and he said, he's in the closet. And we knew immediately what that meant. So Larry and I then go into the bedroom, and in this walk-in closet, there's Dwayne's body. So Larry calls 911, and my dad sits down on the couch, and all he can say over and over again is, how am I going to tell your mother? How am I going to tell your mom? My mother was traveling to visit family out of state. So we had to go back to my dad's house to find the number of the relative she was staying at. And then Dad had to call Mom and tell her, what had happened to her oldest son. He couldn't get it out about the murder. He just said, he's dead, and you need to come home. So, the next day, she arrived. We told her about the murder. We said we didn't have any information yet. The police had called periodically throughout the night and the day, asking questions about Dwayne and his lifestyle habits and his friends, and trying to determine who would have done this. But we hadn't heard from him that day, so I got antsy and I drove to APD, and I was spoke with a guy, and I'll never forget his name. It's Sergeant Joe Austin. The police officer told me that they had arrested somebody and he had confessed to the crime. And the motive was just to steal the car. Steal the fucking car. He gave him the number of a woman named Janice Linhart. As it turned out, Janice's family had been through exactly the same thing with a pretty similar fact pattern. Despite the confession given the day after our case, our murder ended up taking 6 years to resolve. There was a series of violent crimes at that point in Anchorage's history that led to some pieces of legislation that were pretty big changes to the criminal justice system. And there was also an amendment to the Constitution of the state of Alaska, which, you're new to the political process, you don't realize how hard that is. And people that viewed this as their cause as much as I did. And without that, you could not have passed these pieces of legislation, which are pretty big changes, or the constitutional amendment. And it passed with 87% of the voters. It's the largest margin a constitutional amendment has ever passed in Alaska. And it is heartening to have that number because you feel after a while when you try to complain to people about the system that you're simply getting patted on the head. Yeah, Ralph, that's just the way it is. And it's all other people within the system because you're just an outsider. That's the way that it felt at the time. And to kind of flex our muscles for Victims for Justice, so many changes got made. I had it better than Janice's family had it. And I would not know that. When you're looking into that closet, you wouldn't know that. But the people that came after me, I hope the changes helped them. But there's still a discrepancy on how victims are treated by the entire criminal justice system. The court system views them almost as an afterthought. And there are things that all of us can do. I've made a career out of the political world because of this event, and that's not for everybody. But there are a lot of things that anybody can do to help. And quite frankly, as Alaskans, we owe it to victims. We owe it to victims to have compassion and respect, and most of all, justice.